Chapter 1: The Perfect Neighborhood. The neighborhood of Oakwood Hills looked like it was taken straight from the cover of a suburban magazine. Perfectly trimmed lawns, evenly spaced trees, and streets lined with identical mailboxes gave the community an almost picture-perfect feel. For many, it was the American dream: quiet streets, friendly faces, and safe places for children to play. But hidden beneath the well-manicured beauty was something much less charming: the iron grip of the Oakwood Hills Homeowners Association. The HOA wasn't just a board of neighbors who casually looked after the community. It was a rigid system, run by a small group of people who believed they had the right to dictate every detail of how people lived. From the color of your front door to the type of shrubs in your yard, every decision had to be approved by the board. At the center of it all was its president, a woman who had unofficially earned the nickname Karen of Oakwood Hills. She was strict, demanding, and completely inflexible. Residents lived in fear of her violation letters, fines, and late-night complaints. Among these residents was a man named Daniel, who had moved to Oakwood Hills 3 years ago with his wife and 2 children. Daniel loved the neighborhood for its safety and quiet charm, but he had always found the HOA rules suffocating. He was a man who enjoyed personal expression, especially around the holidays. Christmas, in particular, had always been his favorite season. Each year, he spent weeks preparing elaborate light displays, filling his home with festive cheer. For him, it wasn't just about lights. It was about creating memories for his children, who adored the sparkling decorations. That year, Daniel had bigger plans than ever before. After a rough year at work and with his family needing a morale boost, he decided to go all out. He purchased hundreds of new lights, inflatable decorations, and even a synchronized music system that would play carols in time with the lights. His vision was to transform his modest suburban home into a dazzling wonderland, the kind that would make children's eyes widen with amazement and neighbors stop in their tracks. But in Oakwood Hills, individuality was never celebrated, it was suppressed. The HOA had rules about everything, and Christmas decorations were no exception. Decorations could only go up after December 5th, and had to come down by January 1st. Lights had to be tasteful and minimal, which meant simple white bulbs, nothing flashing, and certainly no music. Daniel had always pushed the limits of these rules in the past, but he knew this year would be different. His plan wasn't just a few extra strands of lights, it was a spectacle. When December rolled around, Daniel began working late into the evenings, carefully stringing up lights and assembling displays. His kids ran around with excitement, shouting about how magical the house would look when it was finished. Neighbors passing by would slow their cars, smiling at the sight of his progress. To many, it was a refreshing burst of holiday spirit in a neighborhood that often felt cold and rigid. But not everyone was pleased. It didn't take long for the HOA president to notice. Karen, as she was called behind closed doors, stood at the end of Daniel's driveway one evening, arms crossed and lips pursed. She watched in disapproval as he stapled the last line of lights along the roof. The display wasn't even finished, and she already considered it too much. She didn't say anything that night, but Daniel knew what was coming. He had seen that look before, the look that meant a violation. Notice would soon land in his mailbox. Sure enough, 2 days later, the letter arrived. It was an official notice from the Oakwood Hills Homeowners Association, stating that Daniel's decorations were in violation of the community guidelines. It ordered him to remove the lights immediately, or face a fine of $200 per day, until the display was gone. The reason given was excessive, non-conforming decorations that disrupt the uniform aesthetic of the community. For a moment, Daniel felt the familiar frustration of living under the HOA's thumb. He knew the rules, and technically, he had broken them. But this time, something inside him refused to comply. He looked at his children's faces, glowing with excitement as they talked about how amazing the house would look once the lights were turned on. He remembered why he had done all of this: to bring joy to his family, to give his kids the kind of Christmas they would always remember. He wasn't about to let a power-hungry HOA president ruin that. That night, Daniel made a decision. Instead of taking down the lights, he would double down. He spent even more hours in the yard, adding to the display. The inflatable snowmen multiplied, the strings of lights stretched across every bush and tree, and the synchronized music system was programmed with even more carols. It was no longer just a decoration, it was a statement. A message to the HOA that their control had limits. When the lights finally came on for the first time, the effect was breathtaking. The house lit up the entire block, shimmering with color and movement. Music filled the air as the lights danced in perfect sync. Neighbors came out of their homes, many cheering and clapping at the display. Cars began slowing down, and soon, people from outside the neighborhood were stopping by just to see it. Daniel's house had become the centerpiece of Oakwood Hills, a beacon of holiday spirit in a community otherwise defined by rules and restrictions. But while most neighbors admired the display, the HOA saw it as open defiance. The next day, Daniel received another letter, this one harsher than the last. The fines would begin immediately, and if he refused to comply, the HOA threatened legal action. They claimed his decorations were causing disturbances and creating unsafe traffic conditions due to the cars stopping outside his home. It was clear they weren't just trying to control the decorations anymore. They were trying to crush him. Daniel, however, wasn't intimidated. He knew the HOA thrived on fear, but this time, he was ready to fight back. What started as a festive display had turned into something much bigger. It wasn't just about Christmas lights anymore. It was about standing up to an HOA that had been bullying residents for years. And so, the battle lines were drawn. On one side stood Daniel, fueled by holiday spirit, community support, and a refusal to back down. On the other side stood the HOA, determined to enforce their power no matter the cost. Neither side was willing to give in, and what followed would turn the quiet streets of Oakwood Hills into the stage for one of the most unforgettable neighborhood showdowns ever. End of Chapter 1. Backhand index pointing right. Next chapter will cover the HOA's escalation, Daniel's retaliation, and the neighborhood beginning to take sides.